Welcome to my Sacred 2 review. Hopefully this should be available by the time this comes out. When I look on Steam, it's still not available for pre-order, so hopefully that is going to be available once this comes out. Additionally, I have been playing this a little bit early. I didn't get very far into the game, as you can see from my characters here, mostly because I haven't really enjoyed my time with it. There is some stuff that people will like here, but unfortunately I just think it needed a bit more updating and a little bit more polish to make it a feasible experience for most people. I'm sure those that are nostalgic for it, because I know this is an old classic, will probably be more forgiving. I didn't play the original, so I'm just going to be going off what my experience of the game is. To start with then, let's get into character creation. This was surprisingly one of the more disappointing parts here, because it looks like we're going to have lots to pick from, but it doesn't ultimately affect all of that much. There are some cool things to talk about though. But anyway, we have several starter classes here that we're able to roll into. You almost want to look at these like Diablo classes. So although as you're leveling, you will be able to change all of the stats and stuff to fit different roles, each of them is going to have their own skills, their own weapons, and their own armor that drops on the ground, and so therefore you're not exactly going to be able to just use and do whatever you want. One of the things that I do like here though is that each of these actually does have its own starting zone, so whichever one you start as is going to give you a little bit of a different early game experience. We're also able to choose from the light and shadow here, which is a little bit like in Allegiance. You can basically be good or bad. I haven't really seen what that does to the story. I don't know if that changes how the narrative goes or anything like this. Ultimately, it's just nice to have the choice. We get to worship these different gods that do in fact change your abilities slightly and allow you to have more variation. That is unfortunately the end of our customization though, with just a few bits and bobs that we can then go on to change over at the end on the customization tab. And again, we don't exactly have a ton of customization options here as we are starting out with our character. Character progression then is very standard. We simply defeat enemies to gain experiences. One of the things that I really don't like about this game is that the world directly levels up with us, so it really does make it feel like the character progression just doesn't feel as good because of it. You can see these guys are the very first enemies that you'll normally be fighting, and they are all level 4 because I am of course level 4. When we level up, we are then able to give ourselves additional attribute points, and we're able to spend points on our skills to improve how the character goes. As you can see, this is a fairly extensive list. There is actually going to be great build variety in the ability to be able to do whatever you want. The game actually feels like it's somewhere between Diablo 2 and Morrowind, and I feel like I'm looking at some of the best classics, and this game unfortunately just doesn't hit that mark for me. Now, your actual abilities are going to be called combat arts, and these are actually upgraded by picking up skill stones from enemies as we are defeating them out in the world. I wasn't really a fan of this, and this does kind of remind me of like socketing gems from Path of Exile, I guess, although this game is much older than that. But that is ultimately how you're going to progress your skills. While we're talking about skills, something that I really don't like is that all of the skills are on the same cooldown. So for example, if I cast my fireball, you'll see that my fire tempest is also now on cooldown, so I can't actually switch between two spells to have a more constant experience when it comes to casting my abilities as a mage. And whilst I know this is a fairly new thing, I feel like the lack of a respec option really hurts this game, because I think a lot of people probably would enjoy being able to mess around with a lot of these different skills, spending different amounts of skill points on here, toying with where they want to put their attribute points. But unfortunately, we're just not really able to experiment without that respec being there. When it comes to the game setting, I'm actually quite fine with how the games look. I'm sure there'll be some purists out there that really wish this game looked more like a PS5 game, but I don't mind it. I think the game looks just fine, and the music is actually really fantastic. The music is probably one of the highlights of the game, especially when you first start the game up. There's this metal track that comes out, and as you can hear in the ambience in the background here, the actual setting existing within the world is actually quite pleasant. I think when you first log into the game, and I say log in because I'm pretty sure this game's going to have multiplayer, it's just not available right now. I don't know if that's the case or not though. You'll be coming out, you'll like find the first couple of enemies, you'll be fighting them like, oh, I've got a dude right here, and you're like, oh, you know what, I think I can get used to this. But as you can see here, the combat is just quite clunky, okay? I'm going to get my follower out here because otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. The combat is quite clunky. You can see that it's kind of showing its age here. Just bear that in mind. There is a bit of jank and a bit of clunk to the way the combat works. And I feel like this is going to give people a lot of frustration as they're going around. Just because, like I say, as a mage, I kind of want to be getting into my second ability or something by now, so I can like cast a couple of spells rather than having to cast once and then run off so that I don't get absolutely annihilated in combat. I don't normally comment on stories and quests or anything like that anyway. The few that I've done have actually been relatively interesting. interesting, and the game does have something I like, which is a bit of finality in the characters. So early on, I was tasked with clearing out a cave with an NPC, and if you're not careful with that NPC can die, and therefore you can actually fail the quest through that. So you do need to take care as you're going through the game to make sure that you are taking care of NPCs or anything like this that you have with you as you're making progress. Which brings me to a really strange position, because annoyingly, I feel like I should like this game. I like the idea of it. I like most of the combat. I like the leveling system. The main things that I don't like is that the combat is just slightly too clunky. Like you've seen with these guys here, I can't target them properly. I really don't like the very strict scaling of the game. Like if I were to log out and log back in right now, all these level 4 enemies will be level 5, and I just personally don't really like that. So I actually think for a cheap enough price, this game could be enjoyable. If it does have full-on multiplayer, because obviously on the main menu for me right now, all it says is single player. Maybe there's going to be a co-op element to this, in which case that completely changes my opinion. I would happily play this with friends, because like I say, somewhere in between being a Diablo and Elder Scrolls game is pretty mad. Like if we look at the map here, this map is almost completely open, so you can go all over the place straight away, which is, I guess, is almost an advantage of the scaling system. We can go almost anywhere immediately out of the gate with this huge world that we have available. But ultimately, it just did not suck me in enough, and I found that I was fighting against the gameplay too much.